introducing myself. I was very, which is fine. I was, given that I'm not sure actually I said who I was, and Eleanor might have done before, but my name's Richard Muirhead, and I'm very happy to be part of the kind of Fabric family. I've been instructed I need to do 20 minutes plus, I think, 10 minutes for questions. I might reduce that to 5 minutes for questions, just in case they're too tricky. But as I said earlier, like it's just totally thrilling to have everybody here today. And in preparing for today and looking at the guest list, we thought back to the kind of first real Fabric event that was actually under the kind of brand Farcaster at that point in time, back in the autumn of 2012, when we gathered a small band of people across the road from the Royal Institution in Brown's Hotel for a little breakfast, Anil and I, and we kind of resolved to try and build a firm that was dedicated to getting partnerships going with founders at the very earliest stage, kind of first round, first check, and to do something as different in the sense that we would try and place the founders at the center of our kind of world, and that actually we'd be comfortable doing quite a few different investments, like at a quite high pace. Now, back in 2012, that was actually quite different from the way the venture capital world worked in the UK. And we had folks like Ben Evans at that first breakfast. We rolled on and had a whole bunch of events called Spark Series that we covered, in particular this topic around decentralization and digital assets, way back and through 2013, 14, 15. And then an event that we helped put on with my partner at the time there over here, Tom, the Open Ocean Deep Tech Gets Delicious, again, championing the open movement. And we then did a number of events in collaboration with CogX, the Open Web Forum. So over the years, it's been sort of 30 plus events that I think that we've hosted over the last decade. And building the community around those physical events, there's IRL meet space events, as well as all the work we try and do online, is super important to the way we try and operate as a firm. So we're really grateful for you, not just turning up, showing up, and being involved, and so brew up those questions for that 5 minutes and beyond. And if you fancy, not just asking questions or getting on stage or getting more interactive, please do that. This is not meant to be so formal, although it's feeling quite formal right now. It doesn't have to be. Okay, so let me introduce Beth. So Beth is sitting here hard at work, and she's meant to be from the near future. But given the announcements, given the announcements just now from Apple about Apple Intelligence and OpenAI, it feels like she's not so much from the near future as from kind of like October or November. And it's accelerating, obviously, before our own eyes. And I think people don't know exactly what that partnership's going to look like. I'm the kind of person who did spend last night in between the preparation of the event going back through the developers conference event that Apple had, and looking at the features that they're saying they're going to roll out. But let's just say that she's sitting there and feeling actually a little bit dejected. And before she has even thought about the fact she needs to order a pizza, actually Jarvis, let's call it Jarvis, has suggested that she might order a pizza, her favorite gluten-free, broccoli, kale, walnut, and whatever, celery pizza. And she's ordered that, which is fantastic, because it's kind of in tune with her nutritional needs, because she's sharing all of those through Apple Health and that health service. And so that's good. And then just after she placed the order, she's actually, that order's been paid for by Jarvis in USDC, stable coin. Just before that actually gets dispatched, another message comes in, and before she's even read that message, Jarvis has actually understood the context of that message, the content of the message, who that's from, and decided that actually she doesn't want a pizza anymore, has canceled the pizza order, has actually then engaged in a little kind of sale of that pizza order in an open marketplace, because it's somewhere through the kind of supply chain, sells it for like 80 cents on the dollar, let's call it that, sorry, we're in Europe, and so not too much loss there. And then books the next favorite movie that she would like to watch that night, and she's instead going to have a friend around and have a chat, and hopefully that's going to cheer her up. So that's fantastic. Okay, so just as soon as we're going to see that kind of scenario become a reality, it's all going to get way more spooky. So Jarvis is going to disappear. You won't even know that there's any interaction with Jarvis, and you won't even think necessarily about the concept of food, because you might well have a brain implant that will ensure that that food is ordered in advance. But it could well be the case that as that is happening, and as your body is being monitored constantly through your every interaction with your environment, including the kind of the sheets that wrap you up at night, that you will be prescribed some kind of pizza, but it might not be the pizza that suits you. It might be the pizza that suits who's ever in charge of the pizza empire of the future. Perhaps it's Bezos. So i.e. will be optimized for whatever commercial objective that these organizations that are building these systems have in mind. And Michael Casey referred earlier to his book. There you go, plug, you can pay me later. The Greatest Fight. Our biggest fight, sorry. And the point about that is that trying to make sure, as we accelerate into this future, that we slip down the right side of the watershed and towards something that works benevolently in our favor is a great fight for, arguably, for us as sovereign individuals, to coin that phrase, and for our independence. So, again, that prompted me, in conjunction actually with a speech given by Eric Voorhees at the Consensus 10-year anniversary dinner that just occurred a week or so back, 10 days. I didn't attend, but I saw it online, to think about some of these big struggles that have existed in history. Now, we'll come to it, but he referred to the American struggle for independence and civil liberty. But this doesn't look so American. It's not about the French elections that are going on right now, nor are we going to talk about the UK elections. Actually, we might refer to them a little bit down the track. Some folks couldn't join us because they were so busy engaging in the next election. But this quote, obviously, will be from Robespierre, will be familiar to people. And it actually comes from a year, just 2 years before this scene. Who can name what the scene is? Storming of the Tuileries, which preceded the demise of Louis XVI by a very short period of time. I'm not going to pretend that I remembered all of this from anything historically, but I dug into it. And the important thing is that it can get pretty bloody, these fights for independence. As it happened, the US managed to achieve their independence just shortly before the French did. But then actually the French had a declaration of civil rights around the individual that preceded the Bill of Human Rights and the amendments to the US Constitution, actually by slightly less than a month. And so over a 25-year period, there was this interplay between France and the US, and a whole range of different fronts inspired by, I guess, the philosophy of the kind of preceding sort of 100 years. And it culminated in something that's celebrated here on Mount Rushmore. Apparently, which I'd not absorbed before, referred to as the shrine of democracy. And so we have Washington and Jefferson and Roosevelt more kind of contemporaneously, and Abraham Lincoln. And you can summarize, or I'm choosing to summarize, some of what this is about as a celebration of the independence of the individual and our society from the kind of yoke of monarchy and that mixture of state and religion that people were escaping when they actually came to the US in the first place, and that the French were doing when they kind of created the Republic back sort of 230 years ago. And so it's all about your personal freedom. I think in the last 15 years, we've seen a move to establish a new right over our own personal money. And so that has got a different set of founding fathers and folks who've been involved. Who knows who this person is? Hal Finney. Some people would recognize Hal Finney possibly as being Satoshi Nakamoto. Vitalik, recognized pretty definitively as Vitalik. Our very own Stanny, who's not here because he's in France, but we may have representatives of our amongst us. And obviously, Hal with Bitcoin, Vitalik with Ethereum, Stanny with Aave, and then Brune with MakerDAO and stablecoins, decentralized stablecoins. These are all the building blocks of the sovereign individuals' opportunity to have control over their money directly and not have to rely on banks or on governments. So we think that's a pretty pivotal development. And we've been hearing just in the panel earlier about data and how critical our data is to ourselves, our own personal data, how it might be valuable to us, how it is definitely valuable to other third parties as we kind of accelerate into the future we described. And so we think it's important that we are conscious of taking the choice when we build into that future, that we maintain a direct relationship with the use of that personal data. And so we'd say that this is Jeff Hinton, University of Toronto, one of the godfathers of AI. Eli, who's behind Stark and the Stark and Starkware, and ZK Proofs. I'm not sure we can lay claim to him, but certainly close collaborator. Ilya Poloshukin, who was one of the authors of the Transformer paper, has propelled Transformers, but definitely in the family and in the portfolio. And then Dan Romero, who's building Farcaster, which along with Lens is doing great things in decentralized social media, and we'll come to that again when we're thinking about how is it possible that we're going to be able to provide so much data to feed these different algorithms. So I think this is the third wave of independence that we need to kind of fight. So looking at it from another angle a little bit, this is a diagram of what has been happening over the last sort of 15 years. I feel like over this last 10 years, I've spent a lot of time, in a sense, almost apologizing for how slowly everything has gone. They're like, hey, when is everything going to reach mass market adoption and take off? You guys, what's going on in that space? There's, a whole bunch of different milestones here, a lot of them around open finance, but, to make sure you're getting the calibration right with the kind of total crypto market capitalization, that is Bitcoin, Ethereum, and everything else, but market cap, not fully diluted value for those who are watching that particular detail, reaching 3 trillion and then back to more or less that point again now. And then in recent times, obviously, some important milestones around building a modular and interoperable stack, this Celestia, and we'll go into eigenlayer and restaking in a second, and the approval from a regulatory perspective of the Bitcoin ETF and everyone's expectation that there's going to be approvals of both an Ethereum ETF and indeed possibly a Solana one, and who knows what after that. So a lot of mainstreaming from a kind of regulatory and compliance perspective of the space. And I'm going to touch upon kind of the ongoing deep technical progress that's being made, so that this isn't just about folks building a better app or making the user interface a little bit slicker or working out how to go to market better. There are fundamental steps, often in computer science, that are being done and then sort of rippling out across the ecosystem. So eigenlayer allows, and I'm going to keep it brief, but allows you to take some of the security that's delivered within the Ethereum ecosystem and then share it with other applications and other networks that want to build upon that. And as it says, about 15% is restaked at this point in time. A couple of examples of folks who are making it easy to do zero-knowledge proofs, and these pre-compiled zero-knowledge proofs have gone up 100x in the last 4 years and are being used for both scaling and also kind of for privacy, and we expect that to seriously accelerate going forward. And then smart contract wallets, and we were kind of quite early with seeing what some of the potential was there, has now got millions of monthly active users, and that's pivotal because I think smart contracts are going to lead to some other smart contract wallets or smart accounts are going to lead to some other crucial innovations. By the way, do you like the kind of ChatGPT generated art that we had at the beginning of this webinar? So I did one that was much worse than this, and then Daniel improved it phenomenally. But anyway, this is, so I'm not laying claim to this particular shot. But so we can move beyond, smart wallets that have a bunch of, sort of human-readable features and ability to be preloaded with value and stuff like that, to ones towards chain abstraction and possibly account abstraction. So you can operate within your wallet and run a transaction, say move some value or whatever, and not have to worry whether you're operating on Polygon or Near or Ethereum or Solana even. And then people innovating around restaking as well, so that it's not just a question of which network has got there first and has developed security in it through all of the value that's inherent in it, but all of the different networks can actually share on a bidirectional or multi-directional basis that security. That's one area we've seen. I've mentioned Web3 social media protocols. I think this is crucial to give ownership over the content that you generate. There's about 10x more content that is trapped in social media platforms than has been used to date to train the biggest foundational models of that order. And by the way, of course, data's doubling every year anyway. AI agents, we'll come to that a little bit more in a second. And verification of how it is that what it is that we're receiving from these foundational models and from these agents. If something's being inferred from this kind of compressed universe of data that we're accessing, can we prove that it was referring to the right data set and that what we're actually being passed is coming from the model that we trust? And then a future which will probably involve tokens, again, that are free to move across. I mean, who cares when you roll out an application, whether you're running on AWS or Google Cloud or whatever? You don't care. Who cares? Particularly, you shouldn't have to care whether your Raspberry Pi stock is listed on the London Stock Exchange or the New York Stock Exchange. It should be, you should be indifferent. And so there's a lot of interesting innovations coming on. And so this is a slight tweak from our kind of 2021 view of the stack that supports that shift from a closed economy that perhaps we want to avoid towards an open economy. The tweak is actually not the highlighted line. It's the one below around introducing personal agents. It's how the direction we want to go is not to allow recommendations that are driven by best commercial returns to be the ones that get made, but rather that agents can operate on our behalf in order to express our preference, in order to vote in the different environments that we're operating, in order to accrue value back to ourselves, and that they are our personal agents, and we're going to need many of them. The bit that's highlighted, and again it came up on the panel earlier, is the question of business model, because there is a huge force, and we've seen it now in the way in which it takes a huge amount of money to fund the compute and maybe to buy the data that is going to drive these models. There's a huge gravitational pull around the capital that our existing capitalist system, centralized capitalist system, for-profit incentives has in its favor. And so if we're going to have an alternative that is open, that is decentralized, that is user-owned, it needs to be one that is just not philosophically the one we want. It's not just technically elegant, but it needs to have the business model behind it as well. So I won't go too much into this particular diagram, but it does feature, and you can give us some feedback on it, in a document that I'll show you a QR code for at the end of the presentation, which is our kind of updated thesis in its kind of 0.9 version. But the point of it is that rather than the Web 2 world, where essentially, whether you be Facebook or Google or Amazon or whatever, your intention is attract users to your platform, get them hooked by delivering something productive of use to them, but then extract as much value from them as possible, as quickly as possible as you drive for kind of revenue growth per user. That this one has the users at the center. Users are attracted to the platform. The user data is used to drive personalization ultimately that delivers a better product, better utility, a better service for all of them. And then you can be involved in governance, and then you can be involved in owning the networks that are being built. Another point I just wanted to kind of touch upon is that we're not in China, and we're not in Silicon Valley. we're not in Paris. We happen to be in London right now, but we're, from our perspective, definitely part of Europe. And we see, and these figures, by the way, are taken from Alliance DAO, which is one of the most preeminent talent stage accelerators for founders in this space, in the Web3 space. And you can see that Europe is punching very admirably in terms of the proportion of founders that are hailing from this particular geography. And this is an Electric Capital stat that 70% of the developers in this space are actually outside of the US. So I think there's huge opportunity for folks who are building companies out here. So we have been constructed over this last decade in order to tap into that. We think it's important that we've been sort of led from the get-go by folks who have spent some time in the trenches building, that we've been doing this for about a decade, as I kind of recapped a little at the beginning, and have dabbled in lots of the different disciplines involved in making these decentralized networks a reality. We build a great community, and we continue to have this strong anchor position in Europe, albeit one from which we invest right across the globe. I want to encourage everybody in the room to execute upon this word on the screen right now. By the way, this is the second version as well, but the prompt was founders speed dating in orbit around Earth, or something like that. And then, so think of yourselves as founders, entrepreneurs, you are. This is the second version. The first version had a couple of glitches. But Keiretsu, who's come across the word Keiretsu before? So a couple of hands. It was one actually I noticed, I think I read it on a Red Herring magazine back in last century, in the context of Kleiner Perkins, and talking about how they really strove to make sure that all of the different companies within the portfolio got as much value as possible from working with each other. And then, of course, the kind of broader network. And so we have in the room folks who want to take music and sports and embrace the kind of super fans and all the possibilities of kind of Web3 and to do deals in that space. We have folks who are, have come out of the near ecosystem who are trying to do deals as well. We want to make them stand up and maybe make something happen here. So I think if you can put something together, there was one other deal, actually an investment around that someone might want to begin a preview, then let us know and we can announce it kind of later in the day. If you want to come and stand up on stage and do a handshake on a deal, I'm all up for that as well. But so this is what it's all about, is how to get us all helping each other. We didn't end up with any representatives of government of any description, Lux, UK, European or whatever, or French, in the audience or participating today. We almost did. And look, we continue actually to generally speaking not focus on spending much time with any of these institutions because it takes a long time. But occasionally we have conversations. So first to say, I just want to say, and I feel like I'm probably reaching the point at which I should draw to a close, actually 1 minute 30, not too bad, and questions, is that there was an article by Tom Blomfield, who co-founded Go Cardless, and then Mondo that became Monzo, that he just published recently. And he was talking about a topic that I've pondered for longer than I care to mention, of like what it takes to make a given region successful. And you can talk about great universities, you can talk about sophisticated customers, good buyers who know what they like and what they don't like and will give feedback. And you can talk about the general ecosystem. I even see some lawyers in the audience. We have to have them. But we have to have venture capitalists as well, sadly. And my position on reflecting all of these is actually that I probably beg to differ with Tom's point. Tom's point was we need to get founders to take more risk. But I think that everybody across the world has got the capability and the appetite for taking those risks if the environment is right. So rather than kind of beseeching founders to take more risk and saying, hey, why aren't you as risk hungry as those guys in Silicon Valley? We need a set, the one thing I would continue to focus on is we need more great venture capital firms that can really be good partners to founders. It's not a straightforward job. The founders will tell you that. And we need more support of capital flowing through. And this very graphic piece of artwork, if I can call it that, is meant to represent that even now, by a quick calculation, on a per capita basis, the amount of venture capital in Europe versus in the US is less than a half. So, and if you think about it, that means every time you're raising a round, you raise half as much money as your competitor in the US. And since when was that helpful? And so if we want to continue to generate, drive results from the inputs, ultimately in terms of the value generated, where the market capitalization generated by companies out here in Europe is still low single digits percentage of the total market capitalization of the greatest tech companies in the world, we've still got a long way to go to really, fix these input problems and get going. So hopefully some of that increasing amount of venture capital will be used to fund some of the projects you saw on the stage earlier today, some of the new ones that are bubbling up you might hear about when you're talking to each other today, and that this is Beth again with, I don't know, Bill perhaps. And in this future, it can be an environment where actually the whole network, the whole supply chain that's delivering that food to her is one that actually she has a stake in, because it's been, it's a collective, it's an example of modern mutualism that she can know because she also owns the network that's tapping into her, personal and vital signs that the food she's getting is actually what she needs, and that as far as I can tell, she looks extremely happy about that. She's floating around space. She's literally walking on air, and that's the kind of future that we want to try and move towards. So I thank you for your attention. This is a QR code for tapping into the thesis, which I believe is live, kind of just-in-time delivery. So it should be live on the website. And there actually is meant to be a new website, but I'm not sure whether that's live quite yet. End of day, the website will be live as well. A few DNS problems. What would this be if we didn't have some technical hiccups? So I think I've done that perfectly because there's no more time left for questions. But I don't know, maybe we can squeeze one. If indeed there is a question, maybe that suits the audience as well.
Any questions? Any takers? No? In that case, we've got one.
Richard, yes, thank you very much for your talk. The conclusion I'm sort of slightly coming to is that at the center of the open vision that everybody has here, there is no money. And that's a bit worrying. So it slightly feels as if, you say, oh, well, what we need to sort out is a business model, but you are running the VC, and it feels as though the partners in the VC feel a bit like a sort of charity, where we're putting money into something where there isn't a fixed business model, and where there's nobody really knows how you're going to make money, and everything feels like massive margin compression. And then there are a few sort of people feeding off that on the side. So can you expand on that a bit?
I can. I knew I would get a nice juicy one from you, Roby. So certainly not the message. The message is not that there is no business model. We would maintain that, and the ultimate conclusion we want to make is that we should not be complacent by ensuring, neglecting to focus on this new discipline of token economics to ensure that there are a number of business models under that banner that will work for the open, decentralized, user-owned AI world. And we would say that whether it be Bitcoin or Ethereum or some of the decentralized exchanges, for example, that there's lots of evidence that this can work. I think it's starting to look like it could work on the kind of decentralized physical infrastructure arena, be that kind of Helium or HiveMap, or indeed some of the ones that are focusing on providing GPUs to AI. We're just saying that for all of the progress that has been made and the $3 trillion in crypto capitalization, all-encompassing that has been generated so far, that there's lots more work to be done on ensuring that really can operate throughout the entire stack for the kind of open economy that we refer to. So including talent, including governance, and there are some folks think that should extend actually deeper into electricity distribution and electricity generation and so forth in time. And indeed, actually, there are folks focusing on how to create the capital to fund silicon such that that can also be separated from the control of sort of nation states. So there is a business model, but we should not be complacent about ensuring that we continue to build one, and therefore exceptional venture returns, not financial advice.
Thank you. Big round of applause for Richard, please.
Thank you.